welcome to this episode of Weather Wise Guys. I'm Wes Peary, and this guy is Evan Chickbear. Evan, how you doing on this first Monday of February?
Hey man, rocking and rolling. Feels like the first Monday in March. Felt fabulous outside, coming off of a frigid January. So ready to hit the ground running. It was like 71 at my house yesterday, so that was pretty cool.
63 at my house yesterday in Kansas City, and we'll be in the 60s again today. So people believing this Punxsutawney Phil saying winter, they should maybe have a hard time believing it right now, not just in Kansas City, but down in Alabama.
I feel like we get, like, when it comes to, we have short-term memory. Like, you have a couple days in the 70s, you're like, what do you mean winter's going to be? It's a small sample size, but, you know, some of these rodents, man, they do a better job than us forecasters. Like, they're in touch with their inner nature.
And some of these rodents are actually better than other rodents when it comes to forecasting seasonally. It's kind of interesting. There's about 20 different rodents that do forecasting, and we will actually be breaking down which ones are the best at forecasting. You might be surprised how bad Punxsutawney Phil is compared to everybody else. He's trash. He's trash. It also is funny how some meteorologists do get very angry about Punxsutawney Phil, but
I've always thought it's just like kind of a fun thing. You know, it's ceremonial, whatever, cultural event. It's like a glimmer of hope to people who've been like freezing cold that maybe spring will get here, but maybe not.
Yeah, and no one actually believes that this rodent that is plucked out from a hole or from a trunk is actually doing scientific work.
You telling me he's not in his little den, you know, on a supercomputer, you know, following all the climate models and doing a deep dive into the forecast?
Yeah, he's got his AI chipmunk friends hoping to work with him as well. I would imagine there's actually a chipmunk and a prairie dog on the list. It's fun.
Really?
I would imagine, though, the people across the Southeast would prefer spring over winter, considering how much snow there was a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah, so as we kind of teased last week, Wes, I was able to catch up with David on who he was in Dothan. That's where I was for about 6 years, but they had record snow totals. And, you know, we'll start with that. So I was able to sit down with Chief Meteorologist David Paul. He's in WTVY. He's been in several different cities. This is by far the most historic snow he's been a part of since being here in the South. Take a listen. All right, I'm joined now by Chief Meteorologist David Paul. He works down in the Dothan area. Just survived through that crazy snowstorm or snowmageddon. I don't even know, are they calling it anything yet? Does it have a nickname?
Not that I know of. It was historic. That's for sure.
And David's worked in what, Iowa, I think Missouri, all parts of the country where you'd expect snow, but between Lafayette and Dothan, where you've spent the last 15 plus years, I don't think this was on the bingo card. What happened the other day?
No, there was always that chance. There's always that chance every winter that you see that historic storm. Yeah, I began my career in Missouri, then Iowa, then Illinois. I moved to Louisiana in 2005. We had a snow there in Lafayette back in, was it 08, 09, a couple inches, and that was the biggest I had seen in a long time. And then this storm came together, and it was incredible. I had 6 inches at my house, and going back to the late 1890s, looking at the records when Houston had 22 inches back in, I think it was 1895, towards Louisiana over a foot, you always knew that there was a chance. And then you look at the big storm of 1993, and you see some of the big totals in the Southeast. So, there's always that chance, but to actually see it unfold was incredible.
Yeah, my takeaways when I'm looking at some of the data too, there was that 1895 like Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Depending on the forecast office though, like New Orleans doesn't really have concrete data going back before 1948. So like I'm looking at some of these records, but 95 stuck out, and then 1993 as the two big ones, and this just blew all of it out of the water. Like not close.
Yeah, it was so widespread. Those storms back in 1895 and 1993, it was certain areas that kind of got the heavier snow band. But this was widespread from the Carolinas all the way back through the Houston area. It's just incredible, even down to the coast. I mean, that was so amazing to see the emerald green waters and then the snow on the beaches. Just fascinating.
It's funny you say that. We have a Skycam in Gulf Shores, and I popped that up. I'm trying to still do weather here, and I'm getting so immersed in what's happening down there. But you pull up this Gulf Shores cam, and it's not sandy white, from the sand. It's literally blanketed in snow all the way up to where the tide comes in. I mean, it was just one of the most remarkable things. And even to see like that we're getting the snow in that part of the state versus where we're at. Because I know for a little while there, up here in central Alabama, we were hinting at, okay, we could get some, but it might not go up to Huntsville. And then, it ended up being just this crazy, crazy snow event for the coast.
Yeah, all the way down to the coast. And what's amazing is the modeling really picked up on it. I mean, looking a week out, you kind of saw the ingredients coming together, but then you go short term, and the models did a really good job depicting the snow area, and they kept trending colder and colder. So for us in southeast Alabama and in the Panhandle in southwest Georgia, it became obvious that this was not going to be a mixed event or a freezing rain event, that it would be a snow event, an all snow event for the whole area, which, going down to the coast there, I mean, to see that, incredible. Pensacola, Crestview up to Andalusia, there were some 10 to 12 inch totals over western parts of the Wiregrass there in the Covington County. Just incredible. And even in the Dothan area to see 6-7 inches in spots, it was something to see.
When was the first day, if you remember, that you really bought into the fact that it was going to snow? Not even that it was going to snow, 6 to 8 inches, but that you were at least going to get a couple inches of accumulation.
It was the Wednesday before, so 6 days in advance during our Weather Extra show. Having lived and forecasted in the Midwest and growing up in the Midwest, and I dealt with snow for 20-some years of my life, and I said 6 days before, I said, this looks to be a legitimate snow event for us because all the ingredients were coming together. You had the cold air moving south, straight south from the Arctic all the way down to the Gulf Coast. That, of course, is always the question mark when it comes to winter weather in the South. Will it be cold enough, the whole vertical profile of the atmosphere? So that became pretty apparent that, this is probably going to happen. And then you look at the jet stream, that upper level energy to the west. You look at the low pressure that would induce in the western Gulf of Mexico, tracking through the Gulf, throwing that moisture northward. So the key ingredients were looking pretty realistic 6 days out. So that's when I thought, this might actually happen. This meteorologically speaking, looks like the perfect setup.
Yeah, and so you have a lot more experience with snow stuff than I do. Obviously, I've spent my entire career so far in Alabama, so snow, winter weather forecasting. You kind of touched on it, but what do you think was the biggest factor in this all lining up? Was it just a combination of all of that? To me, it was tough even up until 2 days out for me to wrap my head around, okay, we've got this Arctic air, but we also have this Gulf moisture in play, which you don't usually see those two together. But what was the biggest takeaway, I guess, leading up to it that was the huge factor in this happening?
I was watching that Vorticity Max, that little piece of shortwave energy out in the Pacific that came up over a ridge into Canada, dropped south through the Rockies towards the southern part of the Plain States. And that was key because you had the cold air in place, but the cold air doesn't do anything unless you have the moisture to be pulled northward. And what's going to pull the moisture northward? That upper level piece of energy helped to produce that low pressure in the Western Gulf, and that was the key as we went through time. So that's what I was watching, 3-4 days in advance. Where would that track, and would it time up perfectly with that cold air? And it did. So again, meteorologically speaking, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If the ingredients come together, they're going to come together and produce what winter weather produces in the form of snow. So that was kind of the key factor, and the confidence kept increasing as we were nearing the event, even though it was hard to wrap your mind around the fact that, wow, this could be a big snow event. If you just took yourself away from where you live, we're in the deep South, from a weather perspective, it looked like it would definitely be coming together.
I'm looking at some of these totals here, and I hand drew this because I wasn't able to find a KML.
That's a good
but
map.
I have so much fun building maps, man. I love building me some maps. But when I'm looking at this, and this might be a dumb question again. This is still, snow is something I'm still learning about a lot, early on. But is there any weight to the fact that you saw these snow swaths? I'm looking at the radar and I'm seeing DBZ returns of 30. With snow, which is very high. You'd see that in a snowstorm in the middle of the country. Did the Gulf, similar to a lake effect scenario, did that play a role in some of these heavier bands coming through at all?
No, no, not really, because you had the lower level flow was offshore, so you didn't have any Gulf effect snow mixed in. But I was mentioning this in my post before this event. In a snow event, you get banding that sets up, and it's really due to the winds up above several thousand feet in the atmosphere. That's the flow, that moisture flow in from the Gulf, and there's convergence in the atmosphere. So it's the convergence that sets up these bands in the atmosphere. So that was producing these heavier bands, and there was one heavier band in Louisiana with the initial forming of that low. As that low in the Western Gulf kind of came together, it sat there, it just spun for a while, so that increased the snow totals in Louisiana that you see. And then as that low was finally on the move up to the east-northeast, that created a little more convergence for a longer duration over parts of the Western Panhandle into Southeast Alabama and Georgia. So that's really the key when it comes to an event like this. It's, where do you get the convergence and then the banding of that moisture? Because you think about it, it's just that moisture is, kind of being squeezed together, and that's where the heavier snow bands set up.
No, that's a really good explanation. I had somebody ask me that, and I just didn't know the answer. I thought,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's plausible, but given the wind profiles, that absolutely makes sense that had no role in it. It just, you look down at these coastal locations like, Louisiana. You're pretty familiar. You lived in Lafayette. I mean,
Right.
8 to 12 inches there, down to these parishes. You think of Louisiana as this hot, humid,
Yeah.
and not
It
at all
was
like
amazing. And I'm in you work, with me for a long time, and we never went through a snow event like this, but I'm always trying to use that experience from the past and help the younger forecasters. So my meteorologist Ryan Duggar, who I work with every night, I was explaining to him, and this is good for you to understand too. You look at your 850 millibar temperature profile, and usually the heaviest snow sets up between 0 and -4 Celsius at 850. And it's usually just north and northwest of where that 850 low track is. So typically the very heaviest snow band will set up pretty close to where the -2 Celsius isotherm is at 850. But generally 0 to -4 is that band of some decent snow, and -2 kind of that sweet spot for snow. So if you go back and you look at the models trending colder and just watching the 850 temperatures, it was like, boy, it's all setting up through Louisiana into parts of the southeast.
Was there one model in particular that handled this better far out before things kind of came together?
Far out, I think I'd probably say the Euro did a pretty good job depicting the scenario, the European model. And then as we got closer, the graph model, the IBM graph, which, the weather company is a software company that produces a lot of information for TV stations across the country. They have their own proprietary model, the IBM graph. That graph model did a great job. It was funny. I was texting my friend in Lafayette, who's the chief where I left from in 2015. I said, what do you think of these models? This model run showing 12 inches in Lafayette, and it just seems so crazy, but it ended up being pretty close to reality. And that graph model for Dothan was showing 6.1 inches, and that was the most robust model as we got within 2 days. And I had 6 inches at my house, so that IBM graph short term did a really good job. And that's interesting because that model also did a fantastic job over the fall with the hurricanes coming on through the southeast.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
real quick, because this isn't necessarily like applicable just to this situation, but the importance of looking at multiple runs and multiple models. You can't just, grab one run of something that runs 4 times a day and have that be
Yep.
the end all be all.
Yeah, and that's what drives me crazy about social media. You see these non-meteorologists sharing one run of one model, and they get all these shares and likes, and it just confuses the public. And really, when it comes to forecasting, you can't use one run of one model. And what I like to do is use the deterministic runs in conjunction with the ensembles, the European, the GFS ensembles, because the ensembles are, the model, but then a bunch of different variations of that model, different inputs, and you end up with different outputs, and you average all those outputs together, and you get a pretty good consensus between the deterministic runs that you see typically, the ensembles, and then the use of the AI models. The European AI model, which is relatively new in the past couple of years, that model did a really good job. Same thing with the hurricanes. That model did a really good job, and that was a good tool forecasting this event, because some of the short-term models, as we got closer, were a little kind of wonky. The RAP, the HER, showing the moisture more to the south, but the AI Euro was really consistent, showing that heavier band that set up in the Panhandle up through southeast Alabama, and the moisture amounts were pretty good in that AI model as well. So, yeah, forecasting is not just you said it, one run of one model. It's the compilation of all the data and then tying that data in with your experience and producing a forecast.
Yeah, and obviously, like you'd having that experience. But I have to say, David, if I had seen on the graph, like you were talking about, 12 inches, I'd have absolutely had my doubts. 12
Yeah.
inches in Louisiana, like that's crazy to me. But I'm going to talk with you just a couple of these totals that I got from. These were either National Weather Service chats from the chat office or official measurements. And this is just, I mean, nuts. Were people excited about this? Did people, really jump on board with this being historic, or was this more of a nuisance?
No. So, and I told this to my Met Ryan. This is my 20. How many years have I been doing this? 28 years. 28 years. So I told him that this was probably the most fun I've ever had in a weather event in 28 years. Because growing up in the Midwest, when it snows, people are like, I got to drive in, it's going to be around forever. This was so fun. Everyone loved it. Everyone absolutely loved it. I created a frostiometer.
I saw that. I
Yeah,
liked
so
it.
that was kind of expressing my confidence in the event unfolding, and it kind of built up the excitement, and the confidence grew, and Frosty kept going up the scale. So when it actually happened, everyone loved it. I mean, it was so fun. It was so many memories were made. It was just a great event. It really was.
So, we talked about how rare it is and how they were able to take it in. Would you like classify this as like a 100 years snow, or what on the order would you call this, I guess, to compare to what's happened before?
Yeah, good question. I was thinking about every 100, 150 years you see an event like this. When you look at the fact that it was so widespread, it might be another 100, 150 years. Now, you say that, but what that means basically is there's a 0.07% chance or whatever, every year that it happens. So it could happen 2 years in a row, but, typically, yeah, you're looking at over 100 years before you see this event again.
Yeah, that's good clarification there, because we always talk about the 100-year floods,
Yep,
or
exactly.
100-year this, and that gives it good context. But like places like Panama City, I think their record before this was like an inch, maybe a half inch. When I looked at the climate data, some of these places didn't even have. I think they went back to like 1972. Didn't even have snow ever falling there. And then, I mean, I used to go to Laguna Beach multiple Saturdays when I
Right.
lived in Dothan. 3.3 inches.
It's amazing. It's
Absolutely
amazing.
nuts.
I was talking to a buddy in Panama City Beach in the days leading up to this event, like the Thursday, Friday before, and he was thinking of taking his kids and going somewhere north to see the snow. I said, I don't think you really have to go anywhere. Just kind of stay put, because that snow's coming to you. And it's so hard to believe to see those totals down to the coast. And then you look at, Andalusia, 7 inches, Foley, in Baldwin County, I mean, down to the coast, 10 inches, and Mobile, 7.5 inches, and Pensacola, I mean, 9 inches almost. It's just unheard of. It really
Yeah,
is.
there were 3 sensors in Pensacola. This is the official one they gave was 8.9. I believe that was at the airport, but they have 3 other sensors that were around 9.4 inches. And all of my extended family lives in Pensacola. They didn't know what to do with
Cool.
themselves. That's why, like, I think you had an explainer video on how to make a snowman.
Yeah, yeah,
That's exactly what people needed, because you don't ever see that. Sandcastles,
right.
sure, but snowmen.
Yeah, yeah. Start with the ball. Roll, flip, roll, flip, roll, flip. The key to
Oh,
the snowman is you don't want that second ball to be too big, because if it's too big, then you need like 3 or 4 guys to help pick it up and place it on the base.
yeah, and so you mentioned the snow. I'm glad you did, because I didn't want to forget asking this. It looked like it was big, flaky, light. Like, it didn't look like the snow. When I grew up and I was in outside the Atlanta area, when it snowed, it was a wet snow that if you hit
Yep.
somebody with a snowball, it was like a wet brick. It was
Right.
awful. Was this more like that fluffy northern type snow?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the snow that you would see in the far north, really, like a Minnesota type snow, Iowa type snow. It was so cold, it was dropping to 25, 26 degrees here when it was snowing. So to get the good packable snow, you want that temperature at the surface to be right around 32, even 34 snow, packs really well. Even down to 30, it can be packable. But you get below 30 degrees, and that will be a light, fluffy snow. So leading up to this event, and again, harkening back to my days in the Midwest, I mentioned the fact that we would see blowing and drifting of the snow because of the light, powdery nature of the snow. And we did. And there were some drifts outside the station on Foster Street downtown where it was about 1.5 feet deep. And then we went to the top of the building where, you had good wind, and we had some 2-3 foot drifts up there. It was just incredible to see the blowing and the drifting of the snow. And the dry nature of it also, kind of fluffed up the snow. So typically you take 1 inch of liquid and it creates 10 inches of snow. But if your temperature is in the 20s, 27, 28, that's more like 12 to 1. You get down to 25, 26, you more like 14 to 1, 14 inches of snow to 1 inch of liquid. So that, I think, accounted for a lot of these totals. It wasn't a 10 to 1 ratio. It was more like a 14 to 1 ratio because it was so cold, and that's why you see some of these crazy totals.
I saw so many people, and I could talk to you about this stuff for a long time. I just keep getting these other questions, but thumbing through what viewers send you, how do you tell if it's a snowdrift or an actual accumulation there? Is there a way to differentiate that easily?
Not really. I guess you kind of examine around the pictures to see if there's, like, if it's an open area. So usually if it's an open area, I feel pretty good about the snow totals if there's like a uniform look to the snow. And it seems like most reports that I got and pictures I got, people were doing a pretty good job measuring. How
did your personal forecast, I'll put you on the spot, line up leading into that day? Was there a second that you thought that you'd get, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even 11 inches of snow in some spots?
2 days, 3 days ahead, I was saying 1 to 4 inches is a pretty good bet. 1 to 4. Now the record for Dothan is was 2 inches, so 1 to 4 was like you could double the record, which is incredible. Then as we got closer, the day before, we started seeing some of the model data go a little more aggressive. I mentioned the graph model that was at 6.1 inches. And then you look at some of the other short-term modeling, the liquid precip, I saw 0.7, 0.71. Then you start thinking, boy, 10 to 1 is 7 inches. If it's 14 to 1, it's 9, 10 inches. Now, I would never forecast 9 inches of snow because it's such a crazy event. So, yeah, my 1 to 4, then I bumped it to 3 to 5 the day of with upside potential, and that ended up being a pretty good forecast given what you're looking at, given the fact that this tripled the biggest snow events on record for Dothan going back to 1965. And trying to forecast an extreme event like this, it's difficult.
Yeah. So great stuff, David. I feel like you shed a lot of light on that. And again, this will be one of those things where you remember where you were. I know the 1993 snowstorm, I was very little. I vaguely remember being stuck in 10 inches of snow, like plopped down as a kid to show how tall it was. But this was one to watch from a distance. And I was texting you all throughout this because I couldn't believe it. Our former intern, Stuart, is from OP, and he was sending me some of his totals from there too. Just a crazy, but also fascinating event.
Yeah, so fun to go through. Whenever you have an event like this, an event that's fun, it's not like the tornado outbreak of April 2011 where you had devastating impacts. This was a much more fun event. So when you have a crazy historical event, but people enjoy it and they have a good time with it, it's kind of the best of both worlds. Part of me was like, man, I wish I were in Lafayette to see that snowfall, but then I'd be wishing I were in Dothan to see the snowfall. Anytime you have an event like, record setting like this, you want to be everywhere at the same time, and you can't. You pick one spot. How do you feel? I'm going to turn the tables a little bit. How do you feel missing out on this event being up in Birmingham?
It was tough because I still have several friends down there that live in Slocum and Malvern.
Yeah.
And they were sending me pictures as it went throughout the day. And I was like, man, I never would have thought that I'd be missing out on a snow event by being further north.
Right.
So that I felt left out. Being there would have been awesome, especially to see what is a long form coverage of snow. Because we've done so many severe weather. That's we're wall to wall. It's severe weather. It's never for snow. So yeah, I definitely felt left out a little bit, but I was nevertheless glad to see it through. I followed your stuff and a lot of the viewers down there that still keep in touch with me. I felt like I got to see it through their eyes, but it's still. Me and some friends, we used to run on that Slocum football field there, and some of the pictures I got was the evolution of the snow on Slocum's football field,
Yeah.
and I never thought I'd see that.
It was incredible. The long duration of the snow was amazing. It started snowing at my house right around, I think it was 12:15, the first flakes, and it didn't stop until 9 o'clock roughly. So to have anywhere, I mean, to have 9 hours of snow is incredible. And then to have it down here is just simply mind boggling. And you think about a rain, how often does it rain for 6, 7 hours straight?
Yeah, that too. That's a good
If it's
point.
not a
Good
tropical.
perspective.
Yeah,
And if it rains that long, we're usually dealing with flooding. But I
right.
mean, good grief.
Yeah.
So
It was amazing. It was awesome. Like I said, it ranks up there as at the top of the fun events I've covered. And the memories made, people are going to take it with them for their entire lifetime.
yeah. Well, thanks again for your time, David. Chief Meteorologist David Paul from WTVY in Dothan. Thanks for shedding some light, some expertise on that crazy 2 day stretch or day stretch.
Yeah. Good talking to you, Evan.
Me and David probably could have talked Wes for like a good while longer. We talked even some, off the air. He was discussing how the temperatures in the following days made it to where there was 4 days after the snow that stayed on the ground, and overnight lows reached records. So in Dothan, the coldest for the day, I believe they got down to 9 one morning, and then 13 one morning, and then 17, and it ended up being super cold because of the snowpack being there, that radiational cooling. So just a fascinating setup, and glad he was able to sit down and talk with us.
Yeah, clear skies, calm winds, and snow on the ground is the perfect setup to get like the coldest air possible because your snow goes from a solid to a gas, and that is a really big phase change. So that's pretty wild that it got down to 9 degrees.
Yeah, and I feel like between what you've told me about snow so far and then what David just said, like I feel like I'm still learning about snow because it's just not something that's been a big part of my career thus far. So
Well, going on right now, or recording this around noon Central Time, here is some snow, but thankfully no snow across the southeast. Just snow across where it's supposed to be, and that is mainly
where it's
way up in the
be.
Great Lakes. You got some Rapid City snow, Wyoming snow, Bighorn Mountain snow, Idaho snow, lots going on. And there might be some snow coming into Missouri as we get into tomorrow. Really tomorrow, kind of Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. And what may end up being worse than that, Evan, is unfortunately some freezing rain
Oh no.
and some sleet and some snow. Not fun at all. So we're in the 60s here today, but then as you watch as we go across far northern Missouri into Wednesday morning, it's all ice in Kansas City, north of Kansas City. Omaha gets a little bit of a mix there of some snow. Uh, I've been trying to tell people, hey, this is not a repeat of what happened early January when everything turned to a sheet of ice, but still people kind of have some PTSD from the winter weather out here.
Well, I mean, I would. Would you guys end up getting like 13, 14 inches?
Oh yeah, officially got about 13 inches of snow, or what was it? No, it was like 11 inches of snow, something like that. But as we're doing with cold air up here, maybe with some icy roads, it looks like Wednesday morning, Evan, you guys getting some rainfall.
Yeah, maybe. The big question here is with these systems, notice Wes when you drag these forward, they're going up over this ridge. So we've got weak ridging across the southeast, which is responsible for us warming up, but it's also causing these synoptic systems to be redirected to our north. And then this late week front, it inches closer and closer and closer, but it's kind of unclear whether it gets to us or not. I've got like the highest probability of rain being really not until Sunday, but on Thursday, maybe Friday, about 20% coverage in the DMA. Just not a big rainmaker. We're not going to have a ton of lift, so it's a pretty quiet week for us. The big story is the heat, and that'll be the case across the southern U.S. And then, of course, the dividing line there, a little further north, you got really cold air over the Great Lakes, and then we're kind of sitting just south of that boundary.
It looks like just a ton of warm air advection and moisture all the way up Houston, Dallas, Atlanta. When you get like these little smatterings of green, that's just the weather model trying to make out, all right, there's going to be some scattered rain showers in here somewhere, but it's really tough to pinpoint it.
We actually are going to
Definitely.
have our precipitable water values, which that's a fancy term for how much water is in the atmosphere available to fall. They're going to be around 1 inch plus for the rest of the week. So there's a for this time of year, that's a high percentile. But when we're just north of the Gulf of America, as
Ah,
it's known now, southerly winds bring that moisture back quickly, and they bring our temperatures up quickly. That's why we can swing so quickly. But yeah, going to be warm, going to be feeling a little bit more muggy as well.
back home here to Kansas City, another chance of rain and then freezing rain. Something that may help us out as we go into the freezing rain event is that it's 60 degrees for 2 days and then maybe getting near and below freezing. So even if the freezing rain happens, we may have a little bit of delay in the onset of roads turning icy. But it's about a 2 degree difference in what may be freezing rain or just regular rain, unfortunately,
That's tough.
for Kansas City.
That
Yeah.
is tough.
And so you're going to have to be like, when you're communicating this, you're like telling people, hey, it's going to rain, but it also may be a complete ice rink. So we're just going to have to, you're just going to have to keep tuned to the forecast, see what's going
Nice.
on.
No
Uh,
fun.
no ice over here in the Mountain West, just all snow.
Yeah.
And that's pretty typical stuff. So, Evan, I think just for my perspective in my region, our weather is getting much more active this week, and it looks like it's going to stay, I think, pretty cold overall as we get into the extended period. At least, again, in my neck of the woods, way below average temperatures in the Midwest, into the West. Really, much of the country cooler than average, below average temperatures, except for you guys down there in Alabama, Georgia, and the Southeast.
Yeah, I think this could be a hard situation to forecast for because when we sit and we've had these scenarios where the jet stream stalls just north of here, and it'll be 47 in Nashville and 77 in Birmingham. It's a 4 hour drive. That's a 30-degree difference. It's two different air masses. So we may get into a scenario into the weekend where it's 78, 79 degrees here, and then just north of us in parts of Tennessee, it's going to be much, much cooler. I mean, look at that gradient right there. Friday I'm forecasting I think 78, 77, and
Ooh.
Memphis is 55. That's not far away either. So it's going to be one of those interesting setups where if that boundary shifts further south, it might bust my high. If it shifts further north, then we will stay warm. So
Yeah, cold air, Chicago, New York City. This is pretty typical stuff going on here across the Midwest and the Great Lakes, but not. I mean, that's atypical warmth. It's supposed to be warm in the Southeast, but man, that is very warm. That's Friday, and then this front tries to rebound back in the Midwest, but it pretty much just keeps all y'all in the Southeast and the South in the 70s. Dallas 82 degrees on Saturday afternoon, and then again that front can it make it? Can we go? Can we go? We're trying to get down to Birmingham Sunday afternoon into the 50s. Meanwhile, it's like 80 degrees in Jacksonville, Florida. Atlanta running in the 60s still, and I don't know how far south can this bad boy make it on Monday. It's still kind of hugging the coast there. It looks
yeah,
like.
it's
What's your coldest day this weekend, Evan?
I've got falling temperatures starting on Sunday. So I've got like a high of 79 on Saturday, and then Sunday we may hit 70 degrees in the morning or upper 60s and then fall throughout the day. And then I've got mid 40s to a high right around 60 or 58 early next week. But again, if this boundary shifts further north and it doesn't get here, we're talking a totally different scenario. So I put lots of question marks really beyond Saturday.
Ah, yes, it's the time of the year in which forecasting more than 7 days out, or really sometimes more than 5 days out, is just like a
Just
big,
silly.
big.
With that said, I love this time of year, the transition, but it'll humble you really quick when you think something's going to happen and then the exact opposite does. And you're like, well, I got to figure out why that was. So
So there's already we're expecting a huge contrast in temperatures from the southeast, where it's like pushing in the 80s, and it'll be colder, in the Dakotas and everything like that, but not. I don't think it'll be crazy cold for the actual temperatures, -10 to -20. But still, when it's so warm, pushing 80 degrees, you're already going to get a huge change no matter what. What were the hottest temperatures and coldest temperatures last week?
All right, Wes. I love doing this. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with numbers because
Extreme.
I was not good at math at all. But just looking at the temperature differences across the country, I think is fascinating. So for the second week in a row, the warmest spot was in Florida. This time, Plant City. Now there was three other spots that also hit the same number, but oddly enough, Wes, the Dakotas, Minnesota, that was not the winner. In fact, Hartford, Wisconsin was the coldest spot by a long shot. In fact, they were negative 13 on the 26th, and then Plant City, Florida was 86 degrees. They're about 1,100 miles apart, but this was barely at the tail end of that last cold snap that we had the week before. Most areas were much warmer this time through. I didn't have to thumb through all the negatives. And also, by the way, for anyone curious, there were colder spots across the United States, but I can't go to every mountain range. So I do temperatures, the coldest and warmest temperatures of elevation less than 1,000 feet. Because I feel like once you get over a
Oh,
thousand, you start to have more of an elevation contributing factor. Both of these locations obviously are below 1,000 feet, but I just thought it was interesting that negative 13 to 86. So if you want warm weather, go down to Florida. That's where my grandparents are right now. Those snowbirds. You can go
86.
86.
Did your grandparents get any snow at their place?
So they are up in Empire. So when you showed that huge swath of snow coming off of um, Lake Michigan they're just getting blanketed. Now, they're not at their house because they escaped to Fort Myers all the way until, I think, mid-April,
Okay.
but they're getting tons of snow. And up there's beautiful. Like, the snow up there is so powdery and fluffy and nice, and it comes off the lake, so it just falls in bands. But they're enjoying the 85-degree temperatures down south because that's what they order up this time of year.
Well, speaking of down south, it looks like it'll be staying pretty warm for all of the month of February. So, Evan, I hope you and your viewers are ready for just a little. Listen, I don't want to say early start to spring, but maybe like a not so cold end to winter. I mean, March here locally is still a complete wild card where you never know what you're gonna get. But I mean, once you get past February, do you really get much winter feel in Alabama?
Last year, our final day in the 20s, we on March. Shoot, I had this written down at some point. It was like mid-March. We dropped down to 28 degrees, and then we didn't see a freezing temperature again. Now we had a couple frosts where we dipped down into the upper 30s, like 37, 38 degrees, which is a big deal. We have a lot of farming here, so people don't want to have a frost. There's the peach crop does not do well with a late season freeze.
Yeah.
But by the end of March, we're pretty well warming up. That doesn't mean we won't have cool snaps, but a cool snap for us once we get into April is down into the 40s. And then
Okay.
the first week in May last year, I think we had a couple 40s, but we definitely, our two coldest have got to be, well, December too, but really January and then into the early part of February. And then we still might get cold, but we see these bigger jumps in our highs. Like we can get a lot warmer than we were previously. So, but I think people are ready. We don't do super well with the cold down here.
Yeah, you all have had your taste of winter.
You can
It's
keep it.
like it's like all right, that'll do. And I think that's how people here are locally. Like we got a blizzard, we got an ice storm, like we got about 15 inches of snow. It's like all right, cool. Like we got winter. That's fine. Let's now proceed until we can be outside and enjoy our lives. Evan, I don't know if you remember me mentioning this, but whenever there are these seasonal outlooks or these monthly outlooks, for some reason Kansas City is always in this gray area of nothing.
They
So
don't want to
we
define you as above or
it's,
below. They're just
it's
leaving you
like
be.
they're like we don't know what's gonna equal chances is what they call it for probabilities. Um, and so that's what we have. We have equal chances of being below or above average. Colder weather looks like it comes in with those big dips of Canadian air, maybe even Arctic air, continue to come in there up in the upper Midwest, the Mountain West, the Pacific Northwest. But something about this, about a ridge, looks like it becomes a little bit more persistent. You can kind of make that out.
Yep.
Trough over Seattle, and then that trough does not dig down super far, allowing for the warm air to continue to come up the east coast.
Yeah, and we have scenarios like this pretty often. And what sometimes will happen after we've been in this setup for a little while is we'll have an active weather period too, where you finally do have that
Mm.
Arctic air that surges south, and that clash between that warm, Gulf setup, and that drier Arctic air coming in will sometimes give us severe events. In February, and of course, obviously into March and April. So hoping that's not the case, but I could definitely see this being prolonged. I mean, we have southerly winds for any amount of time, and it's just warm down here. So,
You gotta do something with that warmth
all right, I'll send
eventually.
an email. I'm not sure it'll probably bounce back, but
What, you got an email? What?
that's a very lame joke. When everyone's like, "Hey, can y'all do something about this weather?" I'm like, "I'll send an
Oh,
email." My humor's not for everybody. I understand.
I see what you're saying. You send an email to Mother Nature
Right.
asking for the. Oh, that's witty. Okay, it took me a second to go.
Don't
What's
quit my
going
day
on there?
job.
No,
Well,
no. I thought like you just got an email and like for some reason you just said it out
just
loud and it's like,
I'm sharing with you. I've received several emails since we started, but I wasn't going to share those with you. My wife doesn't think I'm that funny either. I think I'm hilarious, but
you're funny. You're hilarious.
appreciate it.
What I thought was hilarious was the amount of rodents that predict weather and
What?
actually how accurate these are. And I just want to put it out there. These
85?
probabilities were done by much smarter people at the National Center for Environmental NCI, National Center for Environmental. I don't know what the I is, and it's not INSEP. It's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. It's a
Interesting.
branch of them. So they put these together. And the most famous groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil, is actually no better than Woody the Woodchuck
Wow.
from Michigan.
Woody the Woodchuck. Didn't Woody
Set.
the Wood? Didn't one of them bite the mayor or something a couple years ago?
You know who that was? That was actually Staten Island Chuck. That was number
Oh,
one. He's an ego because he's like, I'm so good at
I'm
predicting the
so
weather.
smart.
Don't touch me. I'm so good.
These names are great.
Yeah. So
Gertie.
the most accurate is Staten Island Chuck with an 85% accuracy rate. I don't even know if humans are that good
I would
at doing
say
it.
you start boasting the 85 plus forecasting. That's pretty dang good. So I wonder what old Chuck's recipe is, or how he
Oh,
does so well.
yeah. Must be something in the water over there in Staten Island.
There
They make great pizza. Must make some great forecasts
is
as well. General Beauregard Lee, whom I got familiar with while working in Atlanta,
right.
he has his own plantation. He has his own white column plantation in Jackson, Georgia.
I've seen the thing he walks out of. It's like an estate. It's nuts.
He's pretty good. He must have gone to Georgia Tech or something. He's really smart groundhog. And then Lander Lil actually is a statue. So I don't know.
How do they forecast?
I guess he's like they wake up, look at the statue, and like if the statue is wet, there will be more snow. If the statue is dry, and there will be no more snow.
Hmm.
It's pretty good apparently. I don't know what is your list or what's your favorite of these names here, Evan?
So I love Gertie the groundhog because that just sounds like a friendly, happy-go-lucky little groundhog. I also think Mojave Max is hilarious. Not just the name, but the fact that 25% Max should just give it up. Like that's
He's a
uh that's not good.
he's a
Uh,
turtle. Maybe that's where he's messing up here. It's a completely different animal. Turtles are just not made for forecasting the weather.
no, and they're slow on the draw in general. It's tortoise slow. So interesting. These are
Um,
great names.
my favorite is Concord Charlie. Maybe not so much by name, but because he's
Presume.
never been seen before. But somehow he's 65% accurate.
Gotta stay in the shadows, man. Literally. He doesn't want to be seen, doesn't want anyone to know. Wow.
Of those of you for forgetting, yeah, Punk Satani Phil predicted more winter.
Which could be the case for part of the country and not the case for others. So
And that's what I was kind of confused by. I couldn't really find the methodology they use. Like, are they forecasting the weather for their state? Yeah, I
interesting.
don't know.
Yeah, you get into the weeds there. We'll just, suffice it to say, to each their own, but maybe, oh no.
Well, what I will say is Evan is up, is out of the nil. He got it. Evan, I do have a question though. Did you
Yeah.
mean to send 68? Or, I'm sorry. Oh wait, I'm sorry. The high was 60. I have these wrong. Evan's forecast was 58 and 44. The
What?
actual high was 68 and
No, no, no. I
46.
sent, I sent, I sent 68.
No,
What are you looking at? Don't make me.
I don't
Speaking of,
think so, dude.
don't make me pull up the email and share my screen here, because I will. Let's
Oh, I'm
see.
already sharing it. 68. But then what was the? Oh, okay. Hold on. But what was the high? 58?
No, the high was almost 70.
Okay. All right. So Evan's correct.
Thank you.
Evan nailed it super hard. I
Hmm.
don't, dude. I don't know what I was looking at.
I
Okay.
said the high would be 68 with a low of 44. Do I
Let
need to
me.
take over the forecast
No,
competition?
no, no. Let me just click correct this night right now for the record. Because I was so confused. I was like, no way, it was off.
Add it to the errors and omissions page.
60. Yes.
So wait, if I was off by 10 degrees and I still beat you, how's that possible?
Because I never submitted a forecast.
Oh, so I won by default?
The thing is,
You had me
you told
go.
me to send a forecast, and I was looking at the data on my phone, but then I was getting ready for my daughter's first birthday party, and so I had a million things going on, and it wasn't until that I was getting ready for this on Sunday, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even make a forecast. I didn't even send in a forecast.
Well, that's like such a bummer because like I totally thought like I'm gonna show it to him this week. I'm
You
60,
did.
44, and I pretty much nailed it within 2 degrees, which it's a little closer to me. So I guess I'm familiar with the pattern, but it's a little just sad that I beat you by default, and there will be no pie to the face at least for the next couple of weeks.
Well, the thing is, I don't even know if I could have beat this. Like, you missed the low by 2, and that was it. Like, even if I had forecasts, I was not going to be beating that.
Confidence is back.
So,
It's a great thing.
hell yeah, heck yeah.
The
I had
blue
this problem where I've been saying freaking on TV
Uh-oh.
a few times last few weeks. So it's like, all right, I need to calm down. We're borderline saying a cuss word here
Yep.
for some people.
It's a lot harder for people out there to like when especially when you're being conversational like we're trying to be to like not say your true thinking of it like it is so freaking cold outside like
Yeah.
there's times I wanted to say that you got to be careful what you say because once it's out there it's out there.
So, in the spirit of finding a city between the two of us, since I didn't forecast for Memphis, this one is pretty close. Paducah, Kentucky. This one, I think, maybe is slightly out of your pattern expertise, out of my pattern expertise. So,
And
I
what
don't.
day are we need to start picking what day it is so we know from the get-go. Should we make it like this upcoming should it always be Saturday so
Yeah,
it's
I
the
think we
last
should.
day of the week? Okay.
That's smart. That's
All
smart. Let's
right.
do that.
And from now on, what if you lose 3 in a row, do you get a pie, or is it 5 in a row?
Okay, let's do 5 in a row.
Okay, I think that's fair because I've already lost 3 in a row right off the bat, so let's not do
Let's
that.
say you you owe me a pie if that was the case. So 5 in a row, yeah. And I'll do better because you've done better, but I did not do better that time.
Oh boy, have you looked
Mississippi
up?
State basketball needs to do better.
Yeah, they
That's what's
do.
happening here.
They got beat by your Missouri Tigers. It's very very upsetting.
Yeah, I was having this party as the game was going on, and I have lots of uncles that went to Mizzou, and they were just so hey, check the score of the game. I'm like, yes,
At
I see.
home,
We're down by 25 points.
how
I
are we
see
gonna
it.
lose like that at home? Like it's hard being a Mississippi State fan. Anybody who's out there who thinks like you have a rough year when your team goes like 9-4 like Alabama did, or anytime like the most recent success we had was baseball in 2021. It was awesome. Won the College World Series, great. But since then, it's been all down for football. Basketball's becoming a letdown, although we're still decent. It's not been, anyways.
No, we'll make the tournament. Just I don't know how far we'll get.
We'll get bounced in the first round by somebody like George Washington or St. Louis Billikens, something like that. Virginia Commonwealth. Oh boy,
VCU is don't they have like a? I think they have a history of being really good.
they do. I think a couple years ago they were like a Cinderella school, and they were like decent for several years. So they're not Cinderella anymore. But yeah, they're decent. You know, whatever. We'll see how we do. I don't have high expectations. I'm very negative when it comes to sports. So set the bar low, and you know. But
All right,
what?
what's up with yeah? Go. This is the most acclaimed part of the podcast, so that's
Oh
why
yeah.
we put it toward the end.
So this is
That's why
pretty
that
cool.
yeah.
So we've seen a lot of things in the skies. In January, you could see several planets. You can still actually see several of these planets. In fact, over the weekend, I saw a view of Saturn. It was so bright. But coming up this, what day is the 5th? Is that when? Is that Thursday?
Today's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Wednesday night. Okay, so this will be technically Tuesday night / Wednesday morning, 1 a.m. on the 5th. The moon is actually going to move in front of a cluster of stars known as Pleiades. It's a really bright cluster, and you can probably see it with the naked eye in most spots away from like light pollution. And the moon, when it moves in front of it, will sometimes have an outlining glow. I think the last time this happened, I have to check this, but I think it was back in 2008. But it's going to be first quarter, so it's not fully illuminated, which should make it to where you can see this. But just below it, you can see Uranus just to the north and west, I guess, of it from a visual standpoint. You can see Jupiter. So that's in the western horizon later this week. So moon occulting Pleiades.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, is this an eclipse?
No, not
Like
it's like
an annual eclipse?
this is like made up of thousands and thousands of stars, and so it's
Oh,
bright in the sky, but the moon's going to move in front of it and basically blocking the brightest stars, but it might be illuminated a little bit on the back side of it because of these stars. So just thought it was pretty cool. We don't get to talk about that. And I also thought the name Pleiades pretty cool. All these Latin
Pleiades.
terms.
Do you say Uranus on TV?
So I avoid that planet because there's no good way to say it. Uranus. I mean, how do you say it without
I
smiling?
just say Uranus. I just say Uranus. Like,
I thought about it right before I said it just a second ago too, and I went with Uranus, and I was like, whatever. Like this is. How do you tell somebody seriously? Hey, you see up in the sky, it's Uranus. There it is.
Uranus.
What's it
Like,
doing up in the sky? So avoid it when I can. But
Appalachians. That's one I avoid. Uranus, I can't. I'm just like, we're saying it. I didn't name it.
if you steer into it and you say it with all confidence, you'll be good to go. So that's what's happening with your astronomy minute that just went about 3 minutes. That's okay. Let's quickly go to this day in weather history. Wes,
Ooh.
I know I was excited about this one too. So for February 3rd, this is interesting. The all-time coldest temperature ever recorded in Miami, 27 degrees back in 1917. Similarly, on a cold note, Midland, Texas. I don't know if you've ever been to Midland. There's not a whole lot there.
Nope, nothing there.
They had a record high of 80, and 3 hours later dropped to 37 degrees.
Wow.
That is like a 43-degree temperature swing in 3 hours. Talk about whiplash.
That's some desert stuff right there.
That's a heck of a front. And then here in our neck of the woods, on this date in 1990, there was a severe weather outbreak. We had 7 tornadoes in Alabama ranging from F0 to F2. That was back before the scale changed to EF, back when it was just the Fujita scale. So that is
That's
this day.
that's. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. You came barreling in. What did you need to say?
That's a soft severe weather outbreak for Alabama. That
It
is
is.
soft. 7 is soft.
It
That's
is.
a normal spring day.
Yep, it sure is. But that's all that we had here was those 3. So I thought it was interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't know Texas could have such large swings in temperatures like that.
80 to 37. How do you dress for that? Like if you're on the air and you're like, hey, high's going to be 80, but in the span of you going in and eating lunch and leaving, you're going to drop 20 plus degrees. That's tough.
Whenever you get ready to go into work, do you actually like dress for the weather? Like, do you bring a raincoat with you or an umbrella, heavy jacket if it's like cold?
So my office is always cold. I come in almost always. I wear street clothes to work, right? Like you can see all my suits hanging back here. I got like 90 ties in this office, but I always dress like warm because our office is cold. What drives my wife crazy is she's like, you just got done telling people it's going to rain. Why don't you have a rain jacket? I'm like, it's just something extra. Like I just don't think about it. But I do make sure to at least bundle up. I've got a jacket over here on the ground that I always have just in case. But I very rarely remember an umbrella or a rain jacket after telling people that they need one.
Same. I I don't bring an umbrella. I will bring if it's cold. I will bring a jacket or something. But we're in a TV studio
Right.
for 8, 10, like 9, 10 hours a day. The only
Yep.
time I'm experiencing the weather is walking to and from my car, and I'll dry off before I get on TV.
Yeah, I have about like 9 strides to my car, literally right outside this door. So I mean, I ain't afraid of the rain.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Or there's always this feeling that whenever I step outside after the 10, like, man, I really undersold how cold it was out there. Like, that
I'm
was.
so something I'm trying to get better at is when I tell people, like, I'm so used to looking at a number and assigning that like a feeling, but going out and actually feeling it, like it'd be like, oh, it's 45, that's not bad. Well, relatively speaking, we were in the 20s much of January, so 45 seems warm. But then I walked outside this morning, it was 44 degrees at my house, and I was like, man, it's cold. The heck? So us weather folks still have lots to learn.
It's tough. It's tough. Lots to learn. And maybe we'll teach you something next week.
Hopefully, maybe you learned something. Maybe we lost the wise and the wise guys, but we try.
I think next week we'll finally get away from a talk about the Gulf Coast snow. I don't think that'll be happening again anytime soon in terms of snow on the Gulf Coast, unless I'm missing something.
Nope, I don't think so.
No?
Big thanks again to David. Appreciate the time being taken there. Fascinating stuff. We could have gone a whole hour on that.
Nice. Well, we hope to get more interviews like that in the future. Maybe we need to make more friends around the country or something.
I do need to make more friends. And if you guys have any thoughts, feedback, response, whether you love us, hate us, don't care, give us a comment, drop a like. You can give us a dislike if you want, or tell us something that you think should be done better or you want talked about. That's what we're here. We're here to serve. We're here to teach, and have some fun.
That'd be nice. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see y'all next Monday, same place where you caught this episode.
Have a great week, guys. See ya.